2018 Aston Martin DB11 V8 first drive. 4 fewer cylinders does nothing to hurt the character, speed, or driving joy of this base DB11. 4 fewer cylinders does nothing to hurt the character, speed, or driving joy of this base DB11. V8 isn't a footnote or a throwaway line here, either. It's the reason Aston asked me out to Southern California at all. It's been a year since we brought you the first drive of the DB11 with a traditional V12 underhood. Now the British company is ready to launch the slightly less expensive V8 iteration of the GT car, a car that, frankly, won't be sold much in the US but should do well in markets like Asia and Europe. And the truth is that, down on power or not, it might just be the pick of the line. The engine at issue is a turbocharged 4.0-liter V8 that you'll recognize from the very sexy Mercedes-AMG parts bin. Developing 503 horsepower and 498 pound-feet of torque, the V8 gives up 93 horsepower and 18 pounds-to-foot in addition to 4 cylinders, but it's down just 0.1 seconds to 62 miles per hour, versus the V12 DB11. And though I personally find top speed to be the most irrelevant statistical measure in motoring, I will report that the DB11 V8 can only muster 187 miles per hour, to the double-ton registered by the V12. Call this a Mercedes motor if you must, I'll call it sonic force for delight as the revs pile up. Aston has completely retuned both intake and exhaust to make the German engine sound more British. For those of us that don't collect classic supercars, British here that means a much smoother exhaust note, one that's quieter at its peak volume than, say, a Mercedes-AMG GT. Though to call it quiet overall would be a lie. In fact, the Aston engineers have done a wonderful job allowing the V8 to be heard, growly but not harsh, even at low speeds, so one isn't tempted to drift into a leather-clad stupor, and forget what they're behind the wheel of. Forgetting the noises it makes and the stopwatch reading, the DB11 V8 feels extraordinarily quick. Even in the most relaxed of the 3 driving modes, GT, Sport, and Sport Plus, throttle response is sharp, and speed piles up in a linear, thrilling fashion. Here's where the desert portion of my drive route really showed the Aston well, with long, straight stretches of undulating pavement just begging for high-speed frolic. The 8-speed ZF automatic transmission is absolutely a partner to the engine, and not a gatekeeper to delights. Sport and Sport Plus mode auto shifts happened when and where I wanted them, though I was happy, when climbing and descending mountain roads, to grab for gears myself, via 2 big and useful paddle shifters behind the wheel. That kind of quick reaction time, combined with smooth low-speed takeoff in traffic and around town, meant I was never left wanting a dual clutch. Now, let's talk about mountain roads. Trip planners thoughtfully included routes up and down San Diego County's Palomar Mountain, on roads that I was lucky to find basically empty, save other DB11 drivers, and one very enthusiastic Nissan GT-R. I tend to think of Aston Martins as exceptional fast GT cars, not as well suited for tight roads, a feeling that's reinforced when I look at the DB11 in profile, where it appears to be a mile-long stretch of car-formed sex. The DB11 shape is an instant classic, somehow much more demure than other supercars while still looking like an absolute spaceship when seen next to mortal cars on regular roads. The Aston is long, curving and lovey, its shape painstakingly encapsulating complex aerodynamic aids without resorting to anything so common as a wing. There is a small deployable spoiler that creates downforce from air channeled through vents that start behind the doors, but it's quite subtle, even when raised. And when I look at the classic white grille on the low, comely nose, it's almost like looking into the future of a Pebble Beach lawn. The DB11 is also far less shouty a design than the current Vanquish, it must be said. In other Aston tests I've written, this would be the part of a story where I gush over the craftsmanship of the interior, while bemoaning its functionality and tech, relative to the price. The bitchy part of that equation has been mostly excised in this new DB. Aston's technical partnership with Daimler has also netted its own version of the command infotainment system, meaning the car gets modern navigation, stereo controls, and connectivity, to go along with acres of unblemished bridge of wear leather upholstery. The cabin is completely sumptuous to look at and to sit in. And I'm happy to report, for myself and for the current crop of NBA guards, that the front chairs sit a 6-foot, 5-inch body just fine. The seats drop really low to the floor so I didn't suffer for headroom, and it wasn't a problem finding a vantage point for great forward visibility, minus the very thick A-pillars. The rear seats are perfectly trimmed cubbies for your laptop bag or some light shopping. Human passengers need not apply. The true test of the DB11, in that price range, is whether it will falter or flourish versus cars aimed squarely at performance, like the aforementioned 911 turbos and McLaren 570s of the world. But for those who have already been infected with Aston Martin lust, or collectors and connoisseurs of the brand, the DB11 is as much a gem as the V8 engine that lives beneath its hood. Given the cash, this is one ticket I'd be happy to take Cole Hunter's advice on.